Hey folks, Andy here from Andy McSweeney Photography and Photowalk Brugge, among other things. One of those, among other things, just recently has been Photowalk Brugge. If you saw my last video or maybe joined us on the day, you might know that's the free yearly photo walk I like to hold over here in the beautiful city of Bruges, Belgium. I won't go on about it. You can see the last video and I'll put a little link in the description to help you find it if you're a little more curious. But gang, the point of this video is that after the photo walk, I saw all these great photos going out, and I realized, why not just get in touch with the walkers on the email blast and offer up some free feedback. So I said, send me up to 5 photos, as long as you don't mind them being in this video so I can share it out for everybody, and we might all pick up something that helps our photography. Well, I'm happy to give you my honest thoughts, reflections, play around on the edit and see what we can do. Now, I will say just before we start that, of course, this is art, everything that we're doing here on the photographic front. So remember, it's just my 2 cents, my opinion, how I see things. You know, it's all very relative. So I'm sure some of you will agree, some of you won't agree, but that's part of the joy of feedback. It's about us throwing out our opinions on the work and, you know, just taking it from there. So why don't we do this thing? I'll be back on the other side with a couple of words. Hope this helps. Enjoy. All right, gang, here we are in Lightroom looking at all these wonderful photos that people have thrown us. Why don't we break them into groups? Now, just before we do start, though, I will give you a little bit of context in case you just tuned into this video for the feedback overall. A photo walk is just a big free event where somebody decides to lead people around in a kind of a photo way. You know, we walk around, take photos. I think this shot shows you a little bit what we get up to that day. That's yours truly over in the corner. And, you know, we're taking photos. The theme of my photo walk that we held back in April was people, street, and fun. I think that went down well. You can see there's a lot of people and life and personality going on here. So knowing that, why don't we just jump into the first folder? All right, we got 9 to go through, 5 maximum, couple with a little less, but let's see what we got. Okay, first folder, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Nice shots. I really like this as an opening series. Well, this first shot I think is just a wonderful little catch of the day. You can see there's plenty of life and personality. Everybody's got an interesting character going on their faces and actions. One guy here on the ground is definitely adding some life. What can I say? I love this. I think this is fairly flawless. I can see there's a good amount of post-processing here to bring out the tones, but it does seem to be fairly well contained. And actually, over a lot of the photos, it is a nice, consistent editing. And I'm going to say at the outset, while I didn't ask for a particular series from anyone, you're welcome to just throw me 5 photos as long as they were from the photo walk. Well, it was really nice just to see a consistent edit in this series because I found it really tied it together and took it beyond the sum of its individual photo parts. So for this first shot, I think this is awesome. I can't really say anything against it. I guess if I was nitpicking, and I will be, I might want, if you look where the mouse is, a little bit more of this bottom section, because then I could basically just feel the extra space under that lady's thigh. That sounds a bit naughty, but I think you know what I mean. But solid shot, really nice. Also really like this door in the corner. Adds an extra little bit of character and life, and also it has a little bit of breathing room next to the corner of the frame. So I don't feel like it's just jammed in there in the shot. Lots of intent, purpose, spacing all around. A little bit on the bottom, but otherwise great shot. Next to that, I'm really loving this. This shows how we had over 100 people at the photo walk. As I think I mentioned, this is yours truly mugging it up at the front. Love it. Just raced ahead, got a really solid shot. Again, the black and white, just simplifying things down and just giving it a really nice quality to things. I'm actually a really big fan of black and white and street photography. I find it works out really well. It can simplify down a scene. Like you see, there's a lot going on. You can imagine in color how it would be a little more hectic. And at the end of the day, I guess the psychological implication when I see black and white is just something that would be in the newspaper. Maybe I'm just showing my age there, where I actually had physically had newspapers in my hands as a kid and as an adult sometimes, but you know, that all contributes towards a really strong shot there. And no fault, nothing wrong, just everybody's really expressive and alive. I mean, with street and people and things just happening on the go, it's always a bit of a risk. So I find this just solid, super solid, in fact. Next to that, like this shot, like it a lot. There's maybe just a little softness here that could perhaps benefit from some focus being on this lady's face, which would also focus up this fella. And then if you're at the right aperture, let's take a little look here. Oh, they're all stripped of details. Well, basically just really strong shot, really great moment, but a little bit soft focus on those forward faces kind of throws it off a bit. I would also mention this gentleman in the corner kind of distracts a little bit. I mean, he's not totally killing the shot, but if I may, let me just zoom in there a little bit. We are going to be losing some space around it, but I think it'll still work out. Say something like that. And then there we are. Slightly tighter shot. So, after and before. After and before. So there's a little thought on that one. Okay. Okay. Next shot over. I know this gentleman. He is Jos, who takes the money for the boats and sometimes run the boats around himself. Really like this shot. Great moment. Again, excellent processing. Feels quite natural. A couple of these shots feel just... they're starting to get a little bit too crunchy as far as sharpness overall. I'm thinking there's a hard push on the clarity slider, but it's not over the top, so it's still very manageable. I think the shot has a lot of story to it. I really like it. I think if I have anything to say, it's more about just the framing on the moment. To be honest, I'd prefer to see a little bit less here, or the same amount, but a little more of what's going on here. There might be, I know this corner, there might be some extra chaos going on around it, but the framing, while I don't feel it has to be locked to the rule of thirds or anything, for example, just wouldn't mind seeing a little more of what's going on over in this lady's life. Even if it included what looks like a gentleman with a bit of a cap, that could add some extra life and story to it. Otherwise, I might take it the other way. It could remove some context, but why don't I just show the guy at the window? Maybe even recrop it down so all the spacing is fairly well balanced out. Let's see. Something to it. I like that little piece of the photo. I like the other part of the photo. Let's go back. Before, after. Before, after. But at the end of the day, she could be considered a bit of a distraction, even though she's a really good part of the story. And, you know, of course, the lady looking towards Jos is not hurting the storytelling or the direction that you want your viewers to sort of land towards. So lots of good here. Just maybe a little bit wider, or, I don't know, a little bit to the right on the, if you build your time machine and can go back. All right, last shot. It's not a people shot, so it's throwing me off a little bit just because I've seen 4 people shots and then, you know, some people, but more with the surroundings. Having said that, though, there is a nice bundle of life in there. And while this does, I think, sort of end up leaning towards landscape a little bit more, the fact that there is a boat in life really definitely does give this photo strength next to the other ones. So again, wasn't looking for a series from anyone, but I feel there is a really strong connection between the 5 photos. Not just on the editing, but the consistent theme of people and, you know, just life really bouncing through. So that is not too shabby at all. Mystery photographer who's first on the photo feedback thing. Okay, hope that helps. Let's go to the next set. There's something to see. Why don't we see a full screen? We have, whoops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Also another strong series. Okay, let's get out of there and zoom in a bit. So, I like all 5 of these shots. Again, the people and streets side of things definitely come out. There's certainly some fun here too. A little less fun over there as the moment kind of looks. We don't know, but you know, at the end of the day, the visual storytelling kind of leans it that way. However, really nice strong shot, so I'm liking what I'm seeing. If I have any feedback, well, I suppose we could say, why don't we just get the editor writing? Shot number 1 feels really solid. I like how there wasn't more detail pulled out of the shadows here. You know, I can see a little bit of what's going on with the fella. You could even actually take it down a little bit more, and I think the idea still travels. Also, you notice when I make it even darker and more contrasty like that, let's just blast it up, the story still gets across, and actually it takes on a really otherworldly kind of look. So I liked it as it was. I kind of like it with even stronger contrast. Again, this is all down to taste, but, you know, just the way I see it. Still very, very solid shot, though. Also, if you notice, gang, in that edit I did there, now the blacks are really strong. That's something I really like to see when I look at a print. I got to see at least part of the photo with just a really strong, definite black. And when it takes over like that, compared to the previous way, I mean, there's some solid blacks in there, but they don't feel just as hardcore, I guess, as I'd like to see it for this sort of shot. The next shot, I actually really like this a lot. What I'm not super crazy about here on the get-go is all the color. There's a lot going on. I mean, certainly it is a very valid style within street photography. To compare, let me just drain the color in one fell swoop. Notice how it's just a little easier to get into the heart of the story with that one. Before, I got a lot of color elements to deal with. I got this juice box pack of smokes, life preserver umbrella, thingy in the corner, flowers, and side of the boat. Never mind what's going on in this gentleman's jacket, face, and cigarette color. So, if I pull out the color there, I think it just becomes a stronger shot personally. Also, feels like a bit of a raw moment. You know, I mean, a cigarette in hand always kind of adds some life to it. This guy has just an interesting face, and the glasses kind of give it some power. So as you can see, I'm just making a little more contrasty. Kind of like our previous shot. With the strong contrast going on, you can feel also it just takes on a bit of a harsher or more weighty tone. So for this guy, I think it also benefits from just dumping some blacks. Now, I like to do it by pushing the blacks down over here, but if you want to do it by the contrast slider, I find it works out perfectly well. And actually, in this case, it certainly added something to my shot. Could then pull down the highlights just to bring a little less attention to this bright area. You can see when it's all bright, it just sort of pulls the eye a little bit aggressively. If I take that down just through the slider, I can really bring some power back to him. And this sometimes, guys, is also where, whoops, wrong one. This is sometimes where we can go to our brush tool, whoops, and just kind of draw the light a little bit more by basically, you know, adding some light. You can see I pulled up the brightness there. I'm also going to give it to his jacket because it feels like just a little bit too much of a dark area. So you can see as I'm just gently pulling this up and maybe just popping the shadows a little bit, make my life easy on the jacket. There's a little more life and activity going on there. In fact, before, after. And then at the same time, hey, why don't I pull out my brush tool again, pop, and then go over this white area. Because then, even though I've preset my brush a little bit bright on the exposure, because that's where I start, after that I can just go down a little bit, maybe even take the highlights down to catch the eye less, fill in the other part there so that it looks a little more consistent and even. And then you can see, again, I'm just directing light. Now this is all fast and quick, so excuse any mistakes. Obviously I changed the brush tool. to something smaller and get in there a little more fine. One interesting thing is that I can always go back and take a look here, what's actually been brushed on, and go to the erase tool and start taking out those extra areas. Give that a try. We won't lose time here. But long story short, gang, you can see I've basically just pulled the eye in towards that guy just a little more through a bit of shading. One last little thing I'd do on this one is go to my post-crop vignette and add a little bit of vignette. We'll start off with a heavy one. So again, see, just pushing all the story towards the center because of the brightness of it all. And then I can play around with the midpoint, make it a little bit closer, maybe fiddle around with the roundness. I actually think it works out pretty good out of the box, so I'm going to leave it. But I think now I've got a photo that just really tells the story of that gentleman doing what he's doing while having a smoke on his boat. Before, after. Before, after. So that's how I see that one. Next shot, like this, dead solid. I might play around with the blacks a little again. Maybe it's just my taste, but I find high contrast really works out well as long as it's not over the top. More than anything else, actually, I really like the story in here because there's some text that goes along with this shot, and some of it gets a bit cut off. I mean, this I wouldn't call as anything too important, but that being chopped off kind of loses something. However, down here I have fresh hand cut and what I presume is sandwiches. The fact that she's doing something with her hand, it's got a bit of a fresh and alive vibe. Those are good words to have. So, I really like this shot overall. Thing is, I think you can see I'm more favorable to what's going on in this region. So, with that said, I'm just going to give it a crop. I'm going to go to a square because I think it'll work out best for this format. I take out the word sandwiches because fundamentally it says andwiches instead of sandwiches. Even though I lose her hand, I find this just brings a little more focus into the story. Now I could leave it at this 1:1 scale, which is a nice little square, or I could just unlock it and then maybe play it out a little bit differently. What I'd also consider is just pulling it in a little so that I lose this white object in the corner, which, as you can see, was a little bit distracting. Now, much more into the heart of the story and just feeling right in there with those words in there, nice and focused. And, at the end of the day, job in photography is get to the heart of the story and focus on the story you're trying to tell. So, solid shot, but I think you can see there compared to there, or there compared to there, little more just up front and saying what I want to say. And why don't we throw a little vignette in there? All right. These two fellas having some fries is a good thing to do in Bruges. This is kind of like the last shot, guys. I really like what's going on here. I find the busyness and the extra spacing is getting a little bit distracting from these guys. I mean, certainly when you're grabbing street photography, there is going to be give and take everywhere. Sometimes things are just passing by and you only have that split second. That's totally fine. Just don't be afraid in post. Again, with the cropping, going in a little bit closer, getting rid of a couple of distractions like the extra bit of building, the EPOS sign that's over there, maybe even taking it down to like that. Why do we give it some of its original framing like that? And actually, I think you'll notice pretty quick, by chopping right into the heart of the scene, even though it's busier, a little more focused on these guys. What I could do from there, obviously a little vignette would have some effect there, and a brush tool would not be the worst idea, just to make them a bit brighter and dance on the foreground a little more aggressively. So, again, just quick and loose and everything else. Computer's also having to handle recording video. But if I pull this all up the right way, or at least just cover it and play with my sliders properly, something good could come of this. Let's see what we got. bouncing out a little bit more. Why don't we take the highlights down so we just give those bright areas a fighting chance at not getting in the way. We'll leave them for now, but on a proper edit, I'd probably take that down. I could consider using the clarity slider, either overall in the image or just with the brush tool. That's something to think about. Maybe even pop the shadows a bit so I get a little more light on them. Usually when I pop shadows, I take the blacks down a little bit, which for some reason I don't see in front of me. I know it's around somewhere. Yeah. I'm sure it is. But you can see a little more focus on these guys. And even with the background going on, they're not distracting too much. This guy's still taking over a little bit, but at the end of the day, all I have to do there is brush over him while we brush over the rest while we're here. It's all bright, but we're going to fix it up afterwards. We're going to dwell on these areas with people. In fact, I'm just going to dip in there. Then when I take the exposure down, let's take it down aggressively. A little more separation, a little more clarity, a little more seeing the heart of the story. Let's try before. Let's see after. Whoopsie. After, before, after, before. Okay, next shot on the block. This one I like quite a lot. I'm loving this one, actually. I think it's a really powerful moment. As I said, I don't really know the story that's going on here, but whatever moment was captured and expressed by this photographer by catching it worked out to a good story. All I really feel here is just that a little bit of more contrasty, more, vignette-y clicking would pay off big time. Now you can see I've just brought a whole new tone into the photo, really reinforced, you know, this, I think, just sort of distant vibe that's going on at this particular moment, or at least as far as the camera captured. I could say before is certainly not too shabby, but with after, I think I'm getting, again, a little more to the heart of the story. Maybe just some brush on that gentleman's face. Again, drawing a little bit more light and life to things. There we go. Love that shot, actually. Mostly with the edit. No offense to the photographer whatsoever. Personal taste just kind of dictates that that one works for me like that a little more. So, well done, CV. I see you over in the corner with your watermarks. Nice watermark, by the way. Very much like. Okay, folder number 3. First, second, I know those two. Third, fourth, with yours truly with a mustache on his side, don't ask. And 5. Okay, I'm going to breeze through these a little bit, guys. I think the ideas I talked about still apply over to these shots. I do very much like this one. I don't think there's too much to change here. Bit of a busy scene, so it's a little hard to really just dig into the shot. I don't think black and white in this case actually helps it, because as you can see, there's not too many colors going on, and they're all in the right places towards just, you know, adding to the photo instead of distracting. I think if I had anything here in a small mouthful, I would maybe increase the vignetting a little bit. Probably not quite as rough and dramatically as that, but something along those lines. I would do some brushing. Oh, I was there already. Look at that. I brushed up on the areas around them and just pushed up the exposure a little bit. Why don't we push up the shadows while we're at it? Oh, we did. Okay, all covered. See? So there, gang, I made a little bit of adjustment so that I could see those guys a little more clearly. Before, after. And otherwise a really nice solid shot. Says a story, combines a nice landscape over at the Behainhof with an interesting moment. Certainly tells part of the story of the photo walk, which is something I like to see. So, next shot. This one, as I said, I know these two. This is Marie, my lovely wife's dog. or excuse me, her parents' dog. We're in a bit of a co-ownership thing. And this is the lovely wife, Katie. So I like this shot, obviously, real winner. To improve it, or maybe just get to the heart of the story amongst all this chaos with, little bits of people poking out, guy here, camera there. I take it to black and white, and then I crop in aggressively. You can see, let's do this like that. If I do this, leave a little space, essentially just cutting off this bit of building. I'm going to crop in a little bit closer, not because I don't want you to see my wife's clothed derriere, but I think just such a fine derriere might be a bit distracting. So we're going to go like that and like that. And then you can see, again, just heart of the story. Right in there, real close, real intimate. Could even give it a little more space at the corner of the frame. And I don't think it would be too shabby. So, after and before. After and before. And I, of course, for my taste, would probably start playing with blacks and contrasts. But that's me. Next shot. Love this shot. This is something I think works out really well. I'm not sure if these gentlemen are together in any kind of romantic way. There is an insinuation they're holding so tight, especially with the arm around, but I wouldn't presume anything. If they are, well, yay to them, because I think that's a good thing personally. We should all have the right to be with who we want. But more than anything, it just makes a really nice story. You can see there's a real engagement here. Both of them are looking at the camera, or at least very, very close. In fact, I would call that looking straight at us. I'd say the same story qualifies here, or at least close enough. And, again, I just feel really strong story here. Just the little fact of his hand slipping out there, makes me ask questions and just feels really close. I also really like that the photographer, probably by a combination of zooming and playing with their aperture. Yep, 58 millimeters, I'm presuming on a crop camera by that lens. And at 5.6 with the f-stop, keeping it really low will give you that nice separated background. And that adds a lot of power towards these gentlemen's story being told nice and clear. Especially in this case, you can see there's some people behind them and they're kind of cutting into the scene. Especially this guy's wearing black. It's black on these two, so that kind of blends together in a way that might not be considered too favorable. Also in this case, there is a little bit of somebody else poking out through the collar. Now, some of you might say, let's just Photoshop them all out, or whatever preferred means of deleting things from reality you do on your images. This certainly would be tempting, just add, a little more clarity, because you could, of course, grab that area and just clone it out. I personally find with street photography, I don't like to clone it out. I find it part of the challenge to really keep my editing to a basic, not remove elements artificially in that way afterwards, and just sort of embrace the journalism roots of it all, where you catch what you catch and that's the story. You can play with it a little bit as far as, the editing, if you want to go for contrast, shading, brushing and dodging light in and out. That, I think, is certainly part of tradition and no real reason to change things up there. But at the end of the day, I think if you start photoshopping things out, it makes it just not the same. And I think half of the fun with street is when you don't get it, and then just push yourself harder next time to get it. So no losses here, but just a little thought on why I'm not opening up Photoshop and we're taking things out there. What we're going to do instead, simplify everything by getting things out of there with the color, going to black and white. You can see there's just a little less to dig through. The busy vibe doesn't hit quite as heavily, even with these muted colors, as it does in black and white. So, I'm certainly going to be leaning towards black and white. Also, I find this is the kind of shot that works great in black and white. It's got, again, just a really strong storytelling narrative. I've pumped up the clarity right there to 31 because that made things pop out a little bit. But, the black and white is helping all of this. Also, you can see a couple more details because I'm not sorting through color and distracted by other elements that the black and white change brought in. I can focus on a couple more things. Like, notice how there's a really nice texture and pattern to that guy's jacket. In fact, now that we've taken away the color and sort of sharpened things up a bit, these guys having plain black and this gentleman having funky, awesome black, add that clarity and separation I was looking for before. And as I was talking, I think you noticed familiar moves. I'm taking the vignette amount down into -14 so I can just have a little more focus on what's going on in the middle. See how that works. Pop. Oh, a little bit aggressive there. Still could work out, but let's dial it back just a little bit. Actually, right now I'm just going to dial in a number. -20 I think works. You can see up top that it's kind of shaded that gentleman's head. Luckily it was nothing too dramatic or showing up too heavy. This is where I can play with the roundness to see what I can do. You can see as I'm moving around, it's just changing the shape of my vignette. And in this case, going like that worked out real well. Also in this case, gang, I think boosting the shadows has a benefit. Again, that funky jacket just starts to come out to play a little more. Adds to the separation over here, and we can see a little more detail on their faces. Now, since this is very much a people and moment shot, I'm certainly going to go in with the brush and just add a little spark of life to what's going on their faces. The gentleman over here is a little bit darker, so I find I have to dwell on that a bit more, whereas this guy's pretty good out of the box. Although saying that, why don't I just make my brush a bit smaller, pull up his eyes a little bit, so we can see that look in his eye. That's because, guys, of course, I started at 0.67 as my standard exposure, just towards using the brush tool, but then I start playing around, whether it's messing around with the exposure, whether it's maybe just pumping up the shadows a little bit, or just doing something along those lines. You can see that was the actual path I carved out, and if I took it away, loses a little bit of clarity into what's going on with those fellas, huh? Really, really strong shot. Like this a lot. Going full screen for it. Oh, so beautiful. And if they are together, yay. Next shot. This is a cool little moment with Andy and some of his friends. I gave them a Instax photo. Fujifilm Belgium was kind enough to give us one of those Instax cameras. So that's actually what's going on. I took that a few minutes earlier and just wanted to make sure they had one. And then while I was there, I thought, oh, hey, why don't I take a photo? Fuji's not paying me for any of this, but it's definitely a moment that's worth remembering, isn't it? With this shot, I think there's plenty going on. I think it's plenty of good, too. Sorry to go all black and white on it. I know you might be not agreeing with this and thinking that I'm draining all the color and life out of it, but I find, guys, I think it just really focuses up on all the life and glory that's going on there. You can see I brought up the exposure by 0.9. That added a bunch of life in there. I could, of course, go to my highlights and then recover that. I could, again, go to my shadows and maybe pop up a little there. Oh, why don't we take down the blacks to reintroduce contrast? And now you can see, again, especially a scene like that where there was all these colors going on, I can just jump into the story a little more quick and ready. I also noticed when I looked at this photo, it looks like there's a gradient filter. And that's this tool here where you basically just make like a shadow that falls across the frame in a line. This works out, but I'll just say, guys, if I can notice something in the edit, obviously it's my job to look out for these things, but you know, just be a little careful when you're editing. If a couple things are too obvious or just starting to tickle over the line, don't be afraid to dial it back. Then again, that's also why we like these feedback sessions, so we get to see things fresh, hey? Yeah. So black and white worked out well on that. In fact, let me just show you the finished product. We scooted ahead a little further than we needed to. Dun, da, 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 da. Oh. Hey, black and white. Before, after. Along with some brushing. Look at that brushing. Look at that life. Look at that color coming in. Look at that happy face. Lovely happy faces. Sweet ladies. Pleasure to have on the tour, and pleasure to make a shiny, lively part of the story. See how it's going? That's what I thought. Hey. I like it. Let's go on to the next shot. This one, gang, I kind of feel is the weakest of the 5 I've seen so far. I like it, don't get me wrong, but the fact that it is off angle, which of course I could go to lens corrections and go auto, see what the camera says. It's going to do its best to just level things out. If you get this happen afterwards, it means you forgot to click constrain crop. So if I go back to before and then after, you can see it's just a little more straight. Now I will point out, and Lightroom is about to be updated for this, that it's not actually correctly straight. It picked a line and did its best. What I could do from there, gang, is just using the crop tool, move things around. I could of course go into another part of lens corrections, but we're going to save some time. Now you can see I've got things a little more straight and proper. So already I think the straightening adds to this photo. Personally, I think black and white again works out. It's not just the amount of colors going on here. It's actually just that most of us know cobblestones are going to be gray instead of blue, and I think the color balance just being a little bit off here, excuse me, the white balance just being a little bit off, is distracting. Actually, even if that was corrected, and that could certainly be fixed in a snap, I would also be tempted to do something about this red jacket. What I could do, actually, I'm still going to move this to black and white and finish it off there, but I'm going to show you a little trick. I've used it myself here and there, where I don't have to clone out the lady or, you know, put something over top. But what I can do is mouse over with the brush tool, take my saturation right to 0, do it properly, and if I do it properly, you can see she's just starting to lose that hold on things as the color goes out. Now this is a ridiculously quick and nasty job. This actually might be something I'd find worth firing up Photoshop for, but I think you can see as I take out the color it just gets a little bit distracting. So boom or boom. It's your choice, and again this is unfinished, but that red jacket I think is pulling away a lot from what's going on in the foreground here, which I feel is the story the photographer is trying to tell me. So we'll take that back to black and white. We'll add some vignetting. We'll also bring out the brush and pull out the light on this fellow a little bit so it just catches the eye a bit more. There is one more step I am sort of feeling here. Again, this is all just quick and on the loose. But pop. And then maybe some clarity. Look at that. Very subtle, but it worked. And then after that, I'm going to go back to my main image, edits, and pull down the highlights. Maybe pump up the shadows. Oh, and add a bunch of contrast. Just give it a bunch of mood. After. Before. Oh, zoomed in for no reason. After. Before. After. That's what I think on that. Okay, we better keep moving. We got some more photos to get through. I think, though, guys, you can see there's a lot of concepts that are just popping up over and over again. Black and white for street photography is definitely something to think about. And as you're seeing, controlling the light afterwards with the edit can make a big difference. Obviously, if you get things off camera and that works out, fantastic. But don't be afraid to use a little post-production on that, okay? All right, next folder. Only 3 photos in this one. By GH Photography. I see your watermark in the corner and I like how it looks good. Photo 1, Photo 2, Photo 3. These 3 I think are extremely solid. They're a little harsh. Again, not asking for series, but they do feel a little bit disconnected. I'd certainly be looking at these as single images more than a group. This I find is a perfectly clear, straightforward shot. I like it in black and white. I know this corner, this is going to be a lot of color going on. Although having said that, knowing that these bricks are like an orangey red and these are browny orange, this being white, there aren't too many colors going on here. So it could be maybe the color could benefit this one. I do actually really dig this detail down the bottom. This is Samson having his hair cut by Delilah. We're a quirky little city, and the details are no exception. But, you know, good shot. Solid, clean, clear, straightforward. Doesn't really go by the people, street, or fun themes of the day, but as a shot on its own, definitely not too shabby. This next shot, I think, works out pretty well. It's a very busy scene, so certainly black and white is helping things out here. I think overall, I feel pretty good about this shot. I like what's going on. It's a bit unlucky, there's construction and that van parked in the back. That takes away a little bit from the older overall story I'm seeing with the bricks and everything. But I can clearly see that there was an intent to get these three guys as they were passing through. I'm guessing the photographer maybe just got to the magic moment a little bit slower than they wanted, because I see that this fella's stepping right into the bottom of the frame. If you can avoid that, guys, do not be shy. Sometimes with street, if it's really happening fast, I'll just add 5% on the frame from what I think is right, just to give me that little bit of leeway. But otherwise, I think this shot overall, while I would kind of like if there was just a little less depth of field going on. So if we break open the camera and look at the numbers, you can see it's at f8. Personally, that's a f4 lens as a capacity at that aperture. I would take it down to f4 and get a little more separation going on. You're obviously zooming in at 105 millimeters pretty clearly, so that's starting to drop the background. But imagine if at f4, you'd really separated that out, those guys would pop out of the scene that much more. So I like this shot, but little more to think about changing up before I'd really go super bananas over it. But not bad. This shot I do get a little bananas about over, actually. I think it's a really nice moment. There's so much going on. I mean, it's got a nice simplicity overall. I don't feel like in the last shot I have to dig through so much of it to get to the heart of the story. It's obviously, it's obviously about this gentleman just having a thought or looking at the game or something. But, you know, whatever it is, it's telling me a story that fires up my imagination. I do kind of think black and white works out really well on this one. Sorry, GH. If you think color's the way to go, you do what you want. That's what the joy of this is, if you're not worrying about your clients. I'm not your client, but if I was, I might ask nicely if you could think about a black and white edit for this one. Something to consider. And with that one, I'd also certainly go in there and actually, even if it was black and white or color, you can see the vignetting is adding to things. Before, after. Particularly since I have some bright areas over in that top left corner, I think the vignetting definitely pays off. I can still feel the light coming in, but it's not distracting from my fellow in the center. What I could also do, because the shot, I like the grittiness, but if I wanted to take that out a little bit and just add a little pump of life to kind of take away from the mood, then doing that might work out. What I could also consider, doesn't always work out, but maybe if I bump the clarity right down, there's just going to be a little more softness that could add to the moment of the scene. It's only a thought. You got to try these things. I like it as nice and crunchy, but solid shot. Very well done, GH Photography. Next series, we have these 5 fine shots. Let's see what we got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. All right. Let's start with this first photo. I like this. Nice, simple, straightforward. I can see the story very clearly. I can very much tell it's a rainy day, not just by the reflection of the cobblestones, but the umbrellas really popping out en masse. I think definitely adds some story here. Very much love this lamp in the foreground. Definite character piece, and certainly with these old buildings that are behind the Brugge, I think this is loaded with win. I also happen to like that there is a lamp up here and down here, because whether I pick it up consciously or not, my brain is going to connect these two and just draw me down the scene. And, you know, overall, one of the real strengths of this photo is that all the lines feel like, you know, I start left and look at this lamp and then get drawn in all the way down to the bottom with the umbrella holders. It is a bit unlucky that the van was here. I know this van and it pops up on the corner all the time. It drives me a little nuts sometimes, but we're lucky with this one. The van is at least against a beigeish white building, and that just really blends it a little more subtly. So this shot overall I really like. I think if I was going to change anything, I'll skip hitting the buttons just for the interest of time, guys, but I'd probably just bring up the light around these corners, as in I'd pull up the shadows either on these windows or on the lamp shape itself, just to get a little more separation. That's only nitpicking, but I like. This next shot, I'm just going to say I love seeing a frame within a frame. Somebody grabbed something interesting and, you know, went for it and tried to just build a very layered story. I like it, but to be honest, even though I think there's some interesting stuff going on here, the photographer looking over, a whole bunch of people, it's just ending up a little bit too chaotic for my tastes. At the very minimum for this shot, I think I would probably straighten out the landscape at the very least. I don't mind off angles at all. I mean, there's still plenty going on here that is off angle as far as the forward frame, but I think there's enough distractions in here and enough to keep me busy without sort of seeing that the horizon line is off. And actually, even subtly, guys, and I've been there myself, even a couple degrees on a good landscape shot or certain situations, even a street shot like this, can really make the difference, just to give your viewers confidence that you're getting the basics like a straight horizon. You know, thinking again black and white just to simplify this shot down for the amount of chaos going in there. I mean, it's a shot about chaos, and that's no problem, but little over the top, I think, with the colors. So we're just going to take that down a step. On the next shot, I really like this one. A lot of good simplicity going on. I think the only thing troubling this shot, really, that's a swan in the background, in case you just, for some reason, aren't making it out. I'm going to, do a white balance check and just kind of see if I can get the right colors rolling here. Because, to be honest, you know, really engaging with these two pieces and then the empty space between them. That empty space is drawing my eye to these two main objects. And at the end of the day, when I see, you know, this shelf and I see this wall in the background of the canal, I think those frame each other really nice. On the framing respect, what I might do for this one is just even them off a little bit. So if I make the top side and the bottom side about even, then I think it just gets a little more balanced overall. You can see the lines aren't straight on the horizon. For this one, it doesn't matter as much, especially since it takes an abstract quality quite so aggressively compared to the last shot. But one thing I would change, he says, pulling out his gradient tool, is dropping one of those in there. No way other than that. And then just fixing the white balance. This is really on the fly, guys, so you can see I'm pulling in some water with this. But I think you can also see how it's just taking away the distractions. How do I turn this thing again? How do I turn this thing again? Oh, is it going to be like that? All right, well, we're going to do it this way instead. And also, just to show you the capabilities and options, I'm going to the brush within the gradient tool. I'm going to erase, and then I'm just going to wipe that part that's distracting my water right out of existence. Then if you see, I go to the selected overlay, I'm all set to go. But I'm not quite done yet, am I? So let's go to the next photo. All right, this I think is really interesting, works out well. I'm guessing this is an eBay wide-angle lens, so that's fine, because I'm guessing this person is either watching their money so they can go on holiday and take some photos beyond where they are, or just trying things out before they make the big investment towards a wide-angle lens. Sorry guys, it totally fell over that. I personally find wide-angle lenses are fantastic, so don't be shy to consider picking one up. One thing I would say, though, that's throwing off this shot a lot is just the dead giveaway here in the corner that there is some sort of attachment to a standard lens going on. Now, of course, I make it my business to look out for these things and know what they're about, so I was easy to spot it. But to be honest, I think this shot would really, really benefit from this sort of just disappearing in post-processing. Doesn't mean I have to go out and spend 500 euros on that wide angle. It just means that you might be looking at, a couple of changes and fixes after if you're going to have these things show up in your shots. This is really distracting from this wonderful story going on with the bird and the surrounding houses. Doesn't bother me up here, like you can see, or even down there. And actually here it wasn't a problem. I'm guessing you cropped this photo after, but that I would delete from existence before I show too far forward. Then, same story on this shot. This is at the end of the photo walk. There's a bunch of people hanging around here. That's yours truly. I can tell because I had surgery about a month before the walk. And this lovely wife. This I actually think is a really nice story. I think there's a lot going on here. Trees out of people's head is something to look out for. But overall, I think there's a pretty strong story going on here. Now, I've seen these shots before, so I kind of knew this was an eBay lens because, as you notice, it's very, very contrasty. If I don't have my shadow slider up, whoop, there we go. You can see it gets a little bit rough, and the sky is a part of that giveaway. But if I pull up the shadows, that's an easy fix. And you can see it's adding just a little more clarity in the photo, where this kind of photo just deserves that kind of clarity, especially since there's quite a lot going on here. It's not too much. Personally, I would have also moved over a little bit to my left to get that person in the back of my wife a little more separated. So if you had physically moved left, that would have introduced a gap that I think would have worked out a little better. But certainly nothing that's like breaking the photo too hard. One thing that is, again, breaking the photo as far as my enjoyment of it is just these black corners up here. Again, just in the corners a little bit, but certainly from up top, looks just too distracting to really get into this photo properly. In this case, all I'm going to do is go to a different aspect ratio and then pick part of the photo where I think it gets just that much more exciting and crop in. So before and after, even more, before, after. And then you can see I have a little spark of light coming in here. That would have been the sun, I'm guessing, just catching a lens in a funny way. That I'd probably fire up Photoshop if I really wanted to go for this properly, but otherwise I go to my spot removal tool. I mouse over it, I click the mouse, I go like that, and then it's going to clone an area and hopefully do something good with it. One good thing to know in Lightroom is that you're not stuck with the choice it makes. If you find it didn't really work out for you, don't be afraid to drag that sampled area over from to another corner. You might even find yourself mousing over a couple times just to be able to hide it properly. See, Lightroom, that's not what I want. Why does Lightroom do that? You know, my personal theory, gang, and I hope Adobe doesn't think this is anything more than my 2 cents. I'm kind of guessing it's so that you're interested in Photoshop, because frankly, Photoshop does this much better. You can see even after a couple passes, it's still lingering around and being a bit of a distraction. But Photoshop would take care of that in no time flat, either using the stamp tool where I'm sampling areas or the the, what is it, content-aware brush heal, where I would just mouse over it and it would detect hair and hopefully take all that out in one foul swoop. So that's a bunch of thoughts on that particular series and a few more. Oh, we're going to have to start rushing. It's getting up to an hour here. All right, this one, love it. Ian, looking good. Love the tash, love the shot. Everything's looking real solid here. I think, again, I would bring in some vignette just to really focus up the story. You can see I got lucky at -33 when I clicked that. Just softens out the background, adds a lot more separation. That umbrella and the little drops that are definitely part of the story are still there, and I'm okay with that. But the story is a little more focused on Ian. So, vignette on, and you can see it works out just a little bit stronger in my taste. Next shot, beautiful. Love this shot. I feel like it's something out of, you know, I feel like I've seen this in a photo book or something somewhere before. So if it's reminding me of a classic, something must be going right here. Why don't we just do that with the vignette? Why don't we just throw in some contrast? Why don't we take the highlights down a bit? Hey, what the hell, let's bump up the clarity. And then you can see before to after, whoops, to after, just makes that photo pop that little bit more that I think is not going to do much harm. After that, Peter and Nora, sweethearts. Same sort of thing, just a couple little touches as far as I'm seeing it. Let me throw some black in there. Oh, so not some contrast. Let's take down the highlights. You know, guys, I should mention I'm, of course, working from JPEGs that people sent in. I don't have the original RAWs here. If I had a RAW, I could probably pull this around a little bit more as far as highlights and shadows, which fundamentally I find is what the RAWs are all about. But you can see just with a few touches on the edit, to my taste at least, that feels like where I'd go on this one. You know, this shot I really like. The only thing I think throwing it off is that I saw some really soft, subtle edits, and while it was raining, so I'm guessing there was a little bit of a fight against light for this shot, personally I feel it's just getting a little bit over-processed compared to the other ones. You can see I'm trying to undo that just by, you know, softening things out a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, pulling down the clarity a little. That might take away some of the crunchiness that could be considered unattractive. I think it's reasonable, but I think it's working out a little bit better on the soft side in this particular case. And then I think we have some photos that we can be pleased with. That's the last in there. Let's see what else we can do in time. Number 6, come on down. You are -degree photography. I see it by your watermark. On the watermark side of things, -degree, I got no problems with watermarks. I use them myself. I figure if nothing else, it just, you know, points people my way a little bit, especially for a free photo that they're not paying nothing except for internet and computers on. But this particular watermark just needs a little bit of refinement. Personally, I would add a space after the copyright symbol. So now it looks like -degree photography. Maybe just add one little space, and at the same time add a little space from the corner of the border, because it feels like it's just tickling the corner of the frame a little too aggressively. You can even see there at the bottom of the Y there's just a little more breathing room than there is over here. But as a shot, oh, which I should probably show in a series of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nice. But yeah, nice. All right, this shot I like. Compared to the others, the only thing I find a little bit weird is that it's got so much processing. I know Nick Collection, and I'm pretty sure this is Analog FX Pro, probably on the wet plate module where you can do this fancy effect with layers. But notice, gang, that compared to the others, there's a lot more straightforward and clean editing going on here. So if I was counting this as a series of 5, you might lose a couple points if they were supposed to be interconnected, just on the fact that the editing kind of goes so far that way. Just a thought, not saying it's a bad edit, but that'd be something to consider. Next shot, love this, nothing wrong here. I'd say maybe you could stand a little bit taller next time, even if you have to break out live view, because then you could put the line over here of the windowsill right into that one. Right into the bulb, I should say. So if I stood a little bit higher, this would go down, that would move up, and then I could nail that right through the frame. But having said that, definitely nothing wrong with this shot. Part of what makes this a serious win, gang, you can see there's a real nice separation with the background. Like I was talking about earlier, it can really just clear up where I'm supposed to be looking in the photo. So that on top of this just being really nice light colors, an interesting bulb on its own, full of win. This one I like quite a lot too. This is some nuns over in the Behainhof, over in the nunnery. I like this framing within framing, as I mentioned before. I think if I was going to do anything to this shot, gang, I would probably just crop it in a little bit. There's that top bit there with the light that I find could benefit from just being cut out entirely. If I go to before, you can see just at the corner of the frame I get reintroduced to this light, and it could be considered distracting. So for me, that's not something I'd leave in. If it's for you, go ahead, but if you're asking my opinion, ditch it. At the same time, maybe just also clean up the other corner. All I'm doing is pulling out the brush tool. Looks like there was some sort of light or object in the foreground that was lighter than the next object over that kind of brought a spark of things, but you can see when I just real quick and nasty pull it down with the brush tool and pumping the exposure down, one less distraction. And actually, this shot is really nice. I like this moment. I find there's a lot going on. It's got a nice simplicity overall, and the depth with the frame within the frame works out really well. I think if I had anything to critique, I'd say after this shot, just stand a little bit taller, even take a blind shot just above your head, and as you raise that camera, this lady will dip out of view. That would make her just get out of the way of this lady's story being told. So, little thought there. Next shot, like this. Like this. What else can I say? Just has really nice power, clear separation. I like the moment. I like how, you know, the moment they got with the person looking into the phone and the other one doing the blinkies. That, I think, is full of win. Maybe a little bit less highlight, little more, a little more vignetting, but then again, of course, I'm biased. Still, having said that, maybe I'm biased for a reason. Distractions light all over the place. Focus on these guys. Before, after. Just something to consider. This shot, I've done this shot. I like this kind of shot. The only thing I'd say on this one is it's an old trick. Even though I like the photo within the photo story, and I like actually the photo within this camera, just it doesn't really inspire my soul on the storytelling side. It's the photo of someone taking a photo. It's got a nice meta statement. There is a good shot in there within that person's camera, but I don't know. Fundamentally, I feel like there are better stories to be had. So nothing wrong with it, just not really grabbing me. Okay. Let's see what this person has to offer. Oh, we can see in the corner it's Natalie. Hi, Natalie. Photo 1. Photo 2. Photo 3. Photo 4. Photo 5. Nice shots, Natalie. You won a prize for this one, I believe. Yes, you did. You won 3rd prize in the competition. Photo walk with me. Poor girl. Ha ha. All right, Natalie, this is a really nice, strong, solid shot. It was raining, I know, when we were on this particular corner of town. This is on the Berg right at the start. I like how I see the rain in some of these, and this is certainly part of the story. I think, Natalie, the only thing that's really thrown me off on this is just that it looks a little more like a scratch than a raindrop. Obviously, that's entirely up to interpretation, but for me, ma'am, I would, think about blipping it out of existence with the clone tool, and then just being able to focus a little more on the heart of the story. Again, you can see Lightroom doesn't always do a great job with sampling. That was a bit rough and nasty, but even with the rough and nastiness of it all, I think you can see just one less distraction to take away from this cool story over here. Also, Natalie, I should stop saying your name. I haven't said everyone's. You put it on the watermark, but hey, young lady, I would say that maybe a little blast into black and white would also, again, just bring up just a little more focus on this. There is so little color going on in the scene. I mean, it's working well, but why not just pull out the color and get things out of your way as far as distractions? I mean, you're so close. Now you can just pop into clarity, maybe. I'm a clarity junkie. Something like that. And then it could play just a little more focused. And then on this next shot, I like this, Natalie. I like this, young lady. I can see you've run this through the ringer on the editing, and the giveaway is these kind of artifacts. For this sort of thing, I'd fire up Photoshop and just clone out those extra glows. That's just a little distraction that, well, not everyone's going to spot. I mean, it could take away focus from this awesome story you have downstairs. Because, to be honest, aside from that shot I'm looking at is really nice and solid. It's Frank Van Acker, the statue behind City Hall. That's Peter taking a shot, and he's looking good doing it. Nice drop on the depth of field. Nice storytelling. Maybe a little bit of close crop up top. You can see Frank is not having his hair cut by the framing here, but he's just on the edge of having a few things clipped here. So personally, I'd frame out a little bit wider. And actually at the same time, I'd also frame out wider, or in this corner here, I would take out the little edge of the window. Because you can see now, focus in, it's not interrupted by that little bit of the corner of the frame being there. Much as I like it, I'd want to see a little bit more to feel justified to have it in there. Otherwise, I'd just give a little crop. It's a nice shot, Natalie. This one I like too. Solid, straightforward storytelling. I also like how, it's a color shot, but it's working out well. I'd actually consider maybe boosting the colors on it. So, vibrant, saturation, knocking those up a little bit. You can see it's just sparking a bit of life in there. I could also, I don't know, play with contrasts and maybe just add a little more mood and ambience there. I don't need to take the highlights down. Actually, I'll pop up the exposure a little bit. And, of course, one of my favorite tricks, bring in some vignetting. This is the kind of shot I think, again, benefits from vignetting. You can see in the top right corner, there's some shadows. There's some bright areas. Those get softened out and just a little more friendly when I take that down. And this shot, I like this a lot. A little overexposed on the face. That might just be the shot you ended up with, and you've tried to push it down a little bit with no joy. But I don't know, I like it. It's just a clean, solid moment. I think, Natalie, again, vignetting could pay off just towards pushing the light towards him a little bit more. And, yeah, actually, what you could also think about with this is a crop. And I'm just nitpicking here. I like this as a shot, but check it out. If I go like that, I frame things up so that the line of the boat is going right into the corner. Looks clean and tidy. Again, just a little more to the heart of the story. I certainly don't feel it necessary, but it might be one of the moves I'd try out in the edits. Nice work, Natalie. That's what you get for doing your watermarks. Oh, and this shot, this won third prize, so you can guess I like this one a lot. I got nothing wrong with this photo. Great toning, great editing, great moment, great shot. Pure solid. Really like it. Nicely done. And then the last folder, guys. Let's look at that first shot. 1, 2, 3. Hi, Tom Lebeck. I see your watermark too. 4, 5. Okay. Tom, good series. Black and white. Black and white. With a shadow pump. Let's do that. You got a really good eye, Tom. I love the stories you're telling here. Personally, I just think the color is getting in the way more than anything. Because you're obviously going for like a nice wide open feel on things. But in color, a little bit distracting. As you saw, pushing up the shadows and a little bit down on the highlights. Could also go around with the brush tool, lighten up that swan statue's face a bit, but to be honest, I think the shadow and the implication of just what I see in the shadows is plenty. Next shot, like this. This is me and Peter screwing around. Happy there. Love this one. This is the kind of shot I would push the clarity right up. Whoops, maybe not quite that far up, but that along with a little push there I think could do well. Also, I mentioned earlier how reds can kind of catch the eye a bit aggressively with that photo of that gentleman laying down. What I could have done for that red jacket, since it was the only red thing in the scene, I go to my my color module. I turn down the saturation, and then you can see the red disappear. Actually, you know what? When I see that disappear, what I think could also work out well for this is going the other way, where I take the saturation down really low. You can see, like that. It's still got color, it's still got life, but it also has a very faded aspect. And considering this looks very much like part of the antique street market that we went through that morning, the old school really does well with faded color. So keep that in mind there. Okay, Tom. This shot, Tom, I like, but there's a lot going on here. I wouldn't actually pull it into black and white in this particular case, because luckily you don't have too many colors going on here. It's, you know, orangey brown, bit of a little more red, and then the nice green of these birds going on here. So not over the top or distracting as far as the color goes. All I'd do on this one, Tom, is just take out the sky. Tempting, I know, but take it out and then you can focus on the story of these guys a little more thoroughly. Otherwise, do the opposite. Take out some of that foreground, especially in this kind of shot. The bird is looking towards the sky, and then just zoom in on the heart of the story a little bit more. I could also say to Tom that a little bit of straightening could help bring together the technical side of this shot a little bit more. Yeah, I think that works out best. So there's that. And then I guess that's it. I guess that's all the photos reviewed, and I hope you found this helpful. Why don't we go back to Andy Cam? Andy Cam sounds like a candy. The Andy Camera. All right. Hope that helped you out, gang. Those were some pretty awesome photos there. Hope you all keep in mind what I said at the top of the tutorial, that this is all just, you know, art. So it's all relative opinion. I'm just throwing out there what I think based on my experiences as a photographer, what I see as Photowalk Brugge, what I see out there in the greater world of photography, and of course just down to my tastes on what I see on the photo. So grain of salt, always remember that it's art and you can play around with it and it's all down to your personal interpretation. But feedback is good to sort of help define that personal interpretation. Whether it's seeing something that you missed and going, hey, that actually makes sense to me. I think I'll play with it in this piece and maybe some of my future work. Or actually on the other side of things where you really strongly disagree and go, actually, I didn't do that for a particular reason. And then it's going to turn around your brain why you did it. And you know, if you're honest with yourself, you'll either realize it's a really good move and you'll find the validation for why. And if you don't, well, you might understand why, either from that other person's perspective or how it settles in the brain, and you have a conversation with yourself about that. Okay? All right. I'm just about to get out of here. I want to thank all the photo walkers for showing up. I want to thank the photo walkers who submitted some photos. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. Hope it wasn't too boring. I'd love to know in the comments. Drop me some feedback. That's what those boxes are for. So let me know your thoughts. Give me your 2 cents. I'm still kind of new at these videos, and this is my first feedback video. So don't be shy. Don't be mean. I ain't here for yelling, screaming, and abuse. But all constructive criticism is more than welcome, gang. Even though I do say a lot. So I'll save you some typing by mentioning that. All right. That's me. I'm Andy McSweeney. Feel free to check out my work at andymcsweeney.com or join me on the photo tour. You can get some more information for that at phototourbruges.com. And until then, well, let's see. It's the middle of August. I want to see you get out there and take some photos. Do it. It's beautiful. Life is beautiful. Have fun. See you then.